Have you ever realized that some of the most important and closest relationships in our lives, like our parents, like our siblings, are never chosen by us? They are just given down to us. But another relationship, which is no less important, but which we can certainly do something about when making a selection, is that of a future spouse. In other words, selecting a future partner. But sadly, in our culture, even that choice is either left to chance or to other family members who may or may not be equipped to make that vital decision for us. I'm going to share with you 5 important areas which, if we focus on and explore, the chances are that we will be able to make a reasonably accurate selection of a future partner. I am Dr. Saad Malik. I am Professor of Psychiatry at Shalimar Medical and Dental College. So what are these 5 areas? The first one is we need to know from our future spouse what is the style of marriage going to be. Now, this may come as a surprise to you, but there are styles of marriages. For example, number 1, there is a slave-master relationship where one spouse is a slave and the other is the master. You find that quite commonly in our culture, where unfortunately the wife happens to be the slave. Number 2 is where you have an equal partnership in everyday matters and long-term decisions of life. And number 3 is a mixture of the two. So if you have in mind a marriage which is basically an equal partner relationship variety, and your future partner has that of a slave-master relationship, you are going to end up in problems. You also must understand, when your partner says, I love you and you are everything to me, or you are mine, this is not only a romantic language, this could be a legal language as well. And the little ring around your finger may ultimately end up as a ring through your nose. You must understand that in these relationships, we often confuse love with possessiveness. When your partner is jealous and possessive of you and claims to love you, this really is not love. It's owning somebody. It's inflating your ego by possessing you. In other words, it's a roundabout way of loving one's own self rather than the other person. So that is the style of marriage that you are aiming for. Make sure that you and your future partner agree on the same style of marriage. Number 2, what are your common interests? Common interests bind you together. If you are interested in museums and visiting historical sites, and your partner is interested in going for shopping from morning till evening and going to nightclubs, the possibility is that you will not be spending much time together. Similarly, if your educational background and your socio-economic backgrounds are different, then the chances are again that there will be a mismatch. Number 3 are your values. Values of a similar kind and arranged in a similar order bind you together. Let's take 5 values: money, power, fame, truth, honesty. Try to arrange these 5 values in the order of importance so that what is most important comes number 1 and what is least important comes at the end. If you have a value of money and power at number 1 and your partner has value for honesty and truth as number 1, the problem is going to start right from day 1. So Make sure your values are compatible. They are in the same order of priority as your partner. The next area you need to explore is to discover what are the attitudes and behavior patterns your partner and his family members have. For example, try to find out how they treat each other in relationships. What is the kind of relationship your partner's parents have between themselves, because the chances are your partner will either emulate that or just do the opposite. Number two, find out how these people argue over differences. How do they solve problems? How do they manage their anger? How do they deal with money matters? How do they bring up children in the kind of social background they have? These bits of information will give you a lot of knowledge about the background and the kind of a person you're going to marry. Number 5 is, and very surprisingly, try to find out why the partner wants to marry. This may come as a surprise, but there are 5 unhealthy reasons to get married. Number 1, it is to escape an intolerable home situation. There are many unfortunate families where girls and boys are so frustrated and so exasperated with the toxic environment that they fall out for the first person who gives them a shoulder to cry on. And marriage then becomes an escape from an intolerable situation. Number 2, don't try to become a therapist to your future partner. You have your emotional needs as much as your partner, and you cannot sacrifice your needs forever by taking on the role of a therapist, much that you might feel inclined to do that. Number 3, fear of remaining unmarried. In our culture, as the age of the girl advances, and as she crosses 30, there is more and more fear that the girl may not get married. And because of this fear, they end up in relationships which can be very toxic in the long run. And number 4, and this again may come as a surprise, please do not marry just because you are in love. Because when you are in love, you are wearing the glasses of an emotional person. You are not in touch with reality. You are likely to underestimate the problems in that person's personality and his or her background. So try to make a rational decision rather than a decision which is just based on love. And lastly, another unhealthy reason to get married is where the boy generally in our culture has behavior problems. He may even have a mental illness. And the family thinks that just by marrying him and just by living together, you will be able to cure him or her of that particular disorder. Please don't get entrapped into that. Let the other person improve himself or herself before you get married, rather than use marriage as a cure. In the end, I just like to share 3 points further. Number 1, we have passed the time when simply social pressure used to glue people together in marriage. Women are becoming more educated, they are becoming more economically independent, and less inclined to resign themselves into toxic relationships forever. Furthermore, when people get married, their expectations from marriages are also enhancing, and they do consider other options when they have a marriage in which they are stuck with no future. Number 2, please make the decision about your future spouse with your head and not entirely with your heart. It's a long-term commitment, and you better use your rational side rather than your emotional side. And number 3, please have a say in the decision regarding your future marriage. Don't leave this decision entirely to your relatives. They may be well-meaning, and some of them may indeed be wise and experienced, but many are not. Do not assume that if your family members are in their 50s or 60s, they are necessarily emotionally also at that age. There are many people in their 50s who have the emotional age of a 15-year-old. They are not the right people to make a decision for you. Furthermore, our relatives or parents have their own unmet emotional needs. And while searching for a future partner for you, they are going to be guided by those unmet emotional needs in making a choice. For example, if I always wanted to be a doctor and I couldn't, unconsciously, while searching for a spouse for my child, I would be inclined to look for a woman or a man who is a doctor, even if that person is incompatible with my child. So these are some of the areas which I strongly suggest you should focus on. They are based on my knowledge and experience with thousands of couples and patients in our culture who have come up with these problems. They are not a solution to eradicating all risks, but they can certainly minimize a lot of risks. Thank you for watching.